The courtroom was too quiet for what she was about to say. Arielle stood, both hands trembling as she faced the judge. Daniel sat only a few feet away, his gaze lowered, his knuckles white against the oak table. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady but raw. "Before this divorce is finalized, I have one request." Judge Mercer blinked, caught off guard. The gallery stirred, the low rustle of whispers echoing between the marble walls. Arielle swallowed hard. "I want one last night with my husband." Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, I don't think I heard you correctly." "You did," she whispered. "One night, just one. After that, I'll sign whatever he wants. I'll never call, never come by his office, never—" Daniel shot to his feet. "Arielle, stop." His voice cracked, and for the first time that day, his calm facade shattered. The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Carter, sit down." But Daniel couldn't. He stared at her, his eyes a storm of confusion and pain. "Why would you want that? You're the one who said you were done. You said—" "I know what I said," Arielle snapped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I also know I can't wake up one morning and realize I let go without remembering what we were. One night. That's all I'm asking." The courtroom fell silent again. The judge took off his glasses, exhaled through his nose, and rubbed the bridge of it like a man searching for sense in chaos. "This," he said slowly, "is not a request the court can officially grant." Arielle's voice softened. "I'm not asking for a court order, sir. I'm asking for time, for understanding." He looked from her to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, do you wish to respond?" Daniel hesitated. For a moment, it looked like he might lash out, like years of bottled frustration might finally explode. But instead, his shoulders slumped. He sat back down and murmured, "Your Honor, I don't even understand why she'd want that." Arielle turned toward him, shaking her head. "Because I spent months hating you, Daniel, but I realized hate doesn't erase love. It only buries it, and I need to face it before it consumes me." The courtroom murmured again. Someone's phone buzzed and was quickly silenced. Judge Mercer tapped his pen on the desk, deep in thought. "Here's what I'll do. I'll grant a 24-hour recess before this divorce is finalized. What you do in that time, together or apart, is up to you both. Court will resume tomorrow morning at 10. Then he turned to the clerk. "Record that as a recess, not an order." And with that, his gavel came down, sharp, final, echoing. Outside, the air was thick with rain. Reporters lingered by the courthouse steps, hoping for a headline, but Daniel brushed past them. Arielle followed a few feet behind, clutching her purse like it held the last thread of her courage. He stopped by his car, turned, and asked quietly, "Why, Arielle? After all this time, why now?" She looked at him, eyes swollen but fierce. "Because I've spent months hating you, Daniel, but I realized hate doesn't erase love. It only buries it, and I need to face it before it consumes me." He sighed. The rain began to fall harder, dotting his gray suit. For a moment, he wanted to tell her no, to walk away and let the divorce end it cleanly, but her trembling lip, the defiance in her eyes, it broke something inside him. "Fine," he said. "One night." Her breath caught. "Thank you." They drove in silence. The city lights blurred through the rain, smearing the windshield like fading memories. Inside the car, tension hung thick, the kind that made even breathing feel loud. Daniel's mind kept circling the same thought. She doesn't know. She didn't know why he'd signed those papers so quickly, didn't know why he'd started pushing her away months ago. The canceled dinners, the sudden disappearances, the way he stopped sleeping beside her. She thought it was resentment. In truth, it was fear. The diagnosis had come like a ghost in daylight, a quiet sentence from a tired doctor. Stage 4, late detection. He told no one, not even her, especially not her. Now, as they drove toward what might be their last night together, the weight of that secret pressed against his ribs like a knife. When they reached the old house, the one they'd almost sold twice, the lights flickered to life under the rain. Arielle stood at the doorway, running her fingers over the chipped paint. "This place still smells like you softly." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's because you never changed the air freshener." She laughed through her tears. "Maybe I didn't want to." Inside, they didn't talk about the court. They didn't talk about tomorrow. They just existed, Two people caught between memory and goodbye. Arielle cooked something simple, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the meal they'd shared on their first night as newlyweds. Daniel watched her quietly from the couch, exhaustion hiding behind his polite smile. At one point, she caught him rubbing his chest, just under his ribs. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded quickly. "Just tired." She didn't push. They ate mostly in silence. Outside, thunder rolled through the distance. Inside, the air grew thick with everything unsaid. After dinner, she walked up to him and said softly, "Let's not waste tonight pretending." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months saw not the anger or the hurt, but the woman who'd once laughed in his arms on a summer night when life felt infinite. He rose slowly, the world spinning just a little from the medication he'd taken earlier. "All right," he whispered. "No pretending." And when she leaned in, when her fingers found his, there was no courtroom, no judge, no documents waiting to be signed. Just two souls remembering what it meant to love and lose at the same time. By the time the rain stopped, the house had gone still. And in that silence, Daniel finally allowed himself to close his eyes. Not from peace, but from the quiet terror of knowing tomorrow would take everything away. Morning light spilled through the curtains like a reluctant confession. Arielle lay still, staring at the ceiling, her body wrapped in quiet disbelief. For a moment, she could almost pretend that everything was fine, that this wasn't the night before a divorce, that Daniel wasn't leaving her for reasons she still couldn't name. Then she turned, and reality returned. Daniel was sitting at the edge of the bed, shirt half-buttoned, his shoulders hunched like a man carrying invisible chains. The sunlight caught his face, showing the faint pallor she hadn't noticed before. His eyes, once bright and teasing, were rimmed with exhaustion. He didn't notice she was awake. He just sat there, staring at his hands. "Daniel?" she said softly. He flinched, then forced a tired smile. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." She pushed herself up, studying him. "You've lost weight." He laughed weakly. "Guess stress looks good on me." "Don't joke," she said. "Something's wrong. You've been hiding something for months." His eyes darted away. "Not now, Arielle." "When then? After the judge stamps our divorce?" Her voice cracked. "After we walk out like strangers?" He stood and moved toward the window. "You wanted one last night. You got it. Don't ruin it by digging where you shouldn't." She stared at him, disbelief cutting through her like glass. "Don't talk to me like I'm some reporter chasing a headline. I'm your wife, Daniel." He turned then, suddenly furious. Not at her, but at the truth pressing against his chest. "You're my wife for a few more hours, that's all." The silence that followed was brutal. Arielle's throat tightened. "Then tell me why you've been killing us piece by piece. Tell me why you're so determined to disappear." Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth burned at the back of his tongue, but he swallowed it down like poison. "I'm protecting you," he muttered. "From what? Me?" He didn't answer. Arielle's eyes filled. "You're lying again." She got up, grabbed her bag, and stormed toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, her knees weakened. She turned back, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I begged God to give me one reason to fight for you, Daniel. Just one. And all I got was silence." Daniel's expression softened, regret flickering across his face. He took a hesitant step toward her. "Arielle." She raised a hand. "No, don't. You already let go." And she walked out. The rest of the day blurred. Arielle drove aimlessly through the city, past the park where they'd had their first picnic, past the diner where he'd proposed. Everywhere she turned, there was some echo of him, some ghost of laughter that felt too heavy to bear. By evening, she found herself parked outside his clinic. The lights were still on. She knew he'd stayed behind after resigning months ago, but she didn't know why. Something told her to look inside. Through the window, she saw him speaking quietly with a nurse, his hands shaking as he signed a form. He looked so frail, so unlike the confident man she had once married. Then she handed him a small envelope. She watched as he tucked it into his jacket and wiped his eyes before locking the door. A chill ran through her. When he drove off, she followed, slowly, headlights dimmed. He stopped at a pharmacy, bought medication, and sat in his car for nearly 10 minutes, staring at the bottle like it held his last secret. That's when she knew. The next morning, she was waiting at the courthouse steps before he arrived. When Daniel saw her, he froze. The look in her eyes wasn't anger anymore. It was something worse. Knowing. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. He glanced around, realizing what she'd discovered. "Arielle, please." "You're sick," she said, the words trembling but steady. "You've been sick this whole time." He exhaled, defeated.
It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding her eyes. I didn't want you to see me like this, not wasting away, not pitied. So you thought pushing me away was better? Her voice rose. You thought I'd be happier divorced and alone while you died quietly somewhere? Stop, Arielle. No, you don't get to control the way I grieve, Daniel. You don't get to decide how I love you. The courthouse doors opened and people began filing in, but they didn't move. They just stood there in the morning light, the air heavy with words that had come too late. Finally, Daniel whispered, "You deserved more than this, more than me. And yet," she said softly, tears sliding down her cheeks, "I still chose you." Inside, Judge Mercer looked between them, sensing the change. They sat quietly, side by side this time. No anger, no accusations, only a strange tease that came from exhaustion and truth. "Before we proceed," the judge said, "I'd like to ask again if both parties are certain they wish to finalize this divorce." Daniel cleared his throat, his voice barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." Arielle didn't answer immediately. She turned to Daniel, her hand brushing against his. For a moment, he didn't pull away. Then softly, she said, "Yes." But her eyes said otherwise. The gavel fell once. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. As the papers were signed, Arielle's pen trembled. She felt every stroke like it carved deeper into her heart. When it was done, Daniel folded the documents neatly, thanked the judge, and rose to leave. But before he could take a step, Arielle whispered, "You're not walking out alone." He looked at her, confused. She managed a trembling smile. "You gave me one last night. I'm giving you whatever's left." Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but they didn't stop. They walked past them all, hand in hand, like two people who had already lived a lifetime in 24 hours. Daniel's illness would soon make headlines. Her quiet strength would be praised in whispers and essays. But that day, they were just Daniel and Arielle again. Broken, mended, unfinished. And as they disappeared into the waiting crowd, Judge Mercer watched from his window above, murmuring to himself, "Sometimes love doesn't survive marriage, but it survives everything else."
The first winter rain came 2 months after the divorce. It was gentle, almost tender, the kind of rain that doesn't rush to fall but lingers, like a memory afraid to fade. Arielle stood by the window of Daniel's small apartment, watching droplets crawl down the glass. The city outside was a blur of motion, umbrellas, headlights, lives moving on, but inside, time had slowed to a whisper. Daniel slept on the couch, a wool blanket draped over him. The steady hum of the oxygen machine filled the silence. He had grown thinner, his cheeks hollow, his hands cold even under her touch. Yet when he breathed, there was still a trace of that quiet strength that had once anchored her through every storm. Arielle poured tea, her fingers trembling. Every morning began the same way now. Medication at 8, gentle stretches at 10, soft music by noon. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter, unsigned by her. He'd insisted it was over. She never sent them in. In her heart, the title of ex-wife had no meaning. The vows were carved into her bones, not paper. When Daniel stirred, she turned, smiling through her fatigue. "You're awake," she whispered. He blinked, confused for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You're still here. Where else would I be?" He exhaled a dry laugh. "Anywhere but here. Living." Arielle sat beside him, brushing his hair back. "I am living. This, being here with you, is life." He turned his head toward her. His eyes were dim, but the warmth was still there. "You shouldn't have stayed. You shouldn't have kept dying in silence." They both smiled at the irony of it. Love, reduced to whispered defiance against time itself. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's decline was steady. He refused hospitalization, choosing instead to stay home, surrounded by the remnants of their shared life. The framed wedding photo, the old guitar he used to play, the faded curtains she'd picked. Sometimes at night, he'd wake and find her sitting by his bedside, notebook in hand, writing something furiously under the dim lamp. He never asked what it was, but one night, curiosity got the better of him. "What are you always writing?" he asked. Arielle hesitated, then looked up. "Memories," she said. "Every moment you've forgotten to keep for yourself." Daniel's lips curved in a faint smile. "Then write this one," he whispered. "Write that I was the luckiest man alive." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "You still are." One evening, near the end of January, the city lost power. The room was swallowed by darkness, except for the flicker of a single candle. The flame wavered, as if listening to their quiet breaths. Daniel's voice broke the silence. "Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what? Choosing to stay after the divorce?" Arielle shook her head no. You could have had anyone. You could have started over. I didn't want anyone. I wanted you, even when you pushed me away." He chuckled weakly. "Stubborn as ever. Only with you." A pause stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then, almost like a child afraid of the dark, Daniel whispered, "I'm scared." Arielle didn't flinch. She took his hand, kissed it, and whispered back, "Then I'll be scared with you." That night, he asked for music. She played his favorite song on the old stereo, the one they danced to on their wedding night. Her voice cracked as she hummed along. He closed his eyes, listening, not to the melody, but to the rhythm of her breathing. When the song ended, he looked at her and said, "Remember what you told me the night before the divorce?" Arielle's throat tightened. "I said I wanted one last night with my husband, and he said you'd regret it." She smiled faintly. "You were wrong." He smiled back, tired, fading, but content. "Then tell me this, did that night mean anything to you?" Her eyes glistened. "It meant everything. It was the night I realized love doesn't need a future to be real." Daniel reached out, brushing away a tear that had escaped her cheek. "Then I can go in peace." She shook her head fiercely. "Don't you dare talk like that." But he only smiled again, the same calm, teasing smile that first made her fall for him. "Promise me something," he whispered. "When I'm gone, don't let this be your ending. Write about it. Make it mean something." "I can't promise that," she said, her voice breaking, "because I don't want to write the end." "Then write the truth," he breathed. "That we tried, that we loved." By dawn, the candle had burned out. When the light of morning seeped through the blinds, Daniel was still. His hand was cold in hers. Arielle didn't cry. Not immediately. She sat there, frozen in the quiet he left behind, staring at the soft rise of sunlight touching his face. The world outside went on. Traffic murmured. A child laughed somewhere down the street. But in that small apartment, time stopped completely. When she finally stood, she didn't call anyone. She walked to her notebook, tore out the last page, and wrote, "Love isn't measured by how long it lasts. It's measured by how deeply it's felt, even when time runs out." Then she placed the paper in his hand and whispered, "You're not gone. You just finished first." Weeks later, at his memorial, the judge, who had once granted their divorce, came to pay his respects. He found Arielle sitting by the photo display, calm and unshaken. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said quietly. "I had to," he replied. "Your story changed how I see love." She looked up, her voice soft but steady. "It changed me too." The judge hesitated, then asked, "If you could go back to that courtroom again, would you still ask for that one night?" Arielle smiled faintly, tears welling in her eyes. "I'd ask for it again, 1,000 times over." She turned back to Daniel's photo, that same gentle smile, frozen in time, and whispered, "Because that one night gave me forever." As the service ended and the crowd dispersed, the rain began again, soft, endless, forgiving. And somewhere in that rhythm, Arielle swore she could still hear his voice, calm, warm, eternal. "Love me once more, in memory, not in mourning." She closed her eyes, lifted her face to the sky, and smiled through her tears, because she finally understood. Before the divorce, she had asked for one night with her husband. What she got was the rest of her life. So, tell me, have you ever loved someone so deeply that even goodbye felt like a part of you dying? Would you spend one last night with them, just to feel what once was, even if it broke you all over again? If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Like this video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Was Arielle right to ask for that one night? Or should she have let go the moment love turned cold?